Everyone in the kingdom laughed when the Alpha King chose her, until the silence revealed they were all wrong. The Grand Hall of Moonfall Kingdom had never been this quiet. Hundreds of nobles stood beneath the towering silver banners, waiting for the Alpha King to announce his choice. Everyone expected a powerful Omega from a respected bloodline. Someone elegant. Someone admired. Someone who would make the kingdom proud. No one expected Evelyn Carter. The young Omega woman stood at the far end of the hall, feeling every uncertain glance directed toward her. She was 23 years old with soft brown hair, gentle eyes, and a quiet presence that made people overlook her before they ever knew her story. To most of the kingdom, she was simply the girl no one wanted. A forgotten Omega from a small pack with no famous family name and no powerful connections. Whispers moved through the crowd. Why would the Alpha King choose her? There are others far more suitable. She does not belong beside him. Evelyn heard every word, but she lowered her gaze and remained calm. She had spent her entire life knowing what it felt like to be underestimated. She knew people often judged what they could see before they understood what was hidden beneath. Then the doors of the Grand Hall opened. Alpha King Adrian Blackwood entered. The ruler of Moonfall Kingdom was known across every territory as a leader of unmatched authority. He was 35 years old, with dark hair, silver eyes, and a presence that made every room become silent. The kingdom called him the Cold Alpha King because he rarely showed emotion. He carried every responsibility alone and believed a ruler had to remain distant to stay strong. But today his decision shocked everyone. Adrian walked past every noble family standing before him. He ignored the daughters of powerful houses and the Omegas who had spent years preparing for this moment. His eyes stopped on Evelyn. For a brief moment the entire hall waited. Then he spoke. "My choice is Evelyn Carter." The reaction was immediate. Surprise filled the room. Some people looked confused. Others quietly questioned his decision. But Evelyn only looked at him. With uncertainty. She had never imagined someone like the Alpha King would choose someone like her. Later, as she entered the royal carriage leaving for the palace, Evelyn looked back at the village she had always called home. She was leaving behind the only life she knew, and stepping into a world where many people already believed she did not belong. She did not know why Adrian had chosen her. She did not know what awaited her inside the Alpha King's palace. But she carried one thing with her that no one could take away. Her kindness. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Adrian stood before the ancient records of Moonfall Kingdom. His choice had created questions throughout the realm, but he remained certain. There was something about Evelyn that others failed to notice. Something quiet. Something different. Something that made him believe his decision was not a mistake. That night, as Evelyn arrived at the palace gates, an ancient symbol hidden beneath the royal grounds began to glow for the first time in generations. Neither she nor the kingdom knew what it meant yet. They only knew one truth. The girl everyone rejected had just entered the world of the Alpha King, and her story was only beginning. The first morning inside Moonfall Palace felt nothing like the life Evelyn Carter had known before. The walls were taller than any building she had ever entered. The halls stretched farther than the village roads she grew up walking, and every corner of the palace carried the weight of centuries of royal tradition. Yet despite the beauty surrounding her, Evelyn felt the same uncertainty she had carried since the moment Alpha King Adrian Blackwood announced his choice. She was surrounded by people who already believed she did not belong. As she walked through the palace corridors, she noticed the quiet conversations behind her. Some servants offered polite greetings, but others watched with curiosity and doubt. They had expected a powerful Omega with an impressive family history. Instead, they found Evelyn, a girl who arrived with no title, no influence, and no obvious sign of greatness. But Evelyn did not respond with anger. She simply continued being the person she had always been. When she noticed a servant struggling with a stack of old books, she stopped to help. When she saw a young palace worker nervous about making a mistake, she offered encouragement instead of judgment. These small moments went unnoticed by most people, but they revealed something important about her character. Meanwhile, Adrian Blackwood observed everything from a distance. The Alpha King had chosen Evelyn for reasons he had not fully explained to the kingdom. Even he was still searching for answers. He had studied countless records, reviewed every possible choice, and listened to every concern from his advisors. Yet something about Evelyn had stood out from the beginning. Not her background, not her status. Something deeper. That afternoon, Adrian met with the royal council. The room quickly filled with questions about his decision. The kingdom expected a different Luna, one advisor said carefully. Many believe this choice creates uncertainty. Adrian remained calm as he listened. He had faced challenges before, but this was different. The council was not questioning his authority. They were questioning the person he had chosen. A person's value is not determined by the opinions of others, Adrian replied. The council members exchanged uncertain looks. They were not used to hearing the Alpha King defend someone without considering political advantages. Later that evening, Evelyn explored the palace gardens alone. The peaceful paths reminded her of home, but everything around her still felt unfamiliar. She stopped near an ancient stone fountain covered with symbols she did not recognize. As she reached out to touch one of the carvings, a strange warmth passed through her hand. For a brief moment, the symbol beneath her fingers shimmered with a soft silver light. Evelyn quickly stepped back, unsure of what she had seen. She looked around, but no one was there. She wondered if she had imagined it. Far away in the palace archives, Adrian discovered an old record that mentioned a forgotten legend connected to a hidden wolf lineage. The pages were incomplete, but one sentence remained clear. The strongest spirit may rest where the world sees the least. Adrian read the words again, thinking about Evelyn. He did not know what connection existed between the ancient records and the Omega bride he had chosen. But for the first time in many years, the Alpha King felt the presence of a mystery he could not solve through logic alone. That night, while the palace slept, the ancient symbol beneath Moonfall Kingdom glowed once again. And deep inside Evelyn, something unknown began to stir. The days that followed Evelyn Carter's arrival at Moonfall Palace revealed a truth she had never expected. The palace was not only a place of beauty and tradition, it was also a place filled with expectations. Every movement was noticed, every decision was discussed, and every mistake was remembered. Evelyn understood that many people were waiting for her to prove them right. They believed she was too ordinary to stand beside the Alpha King. But instead of trying to convince them with words, she chose to show them who she was through her actions. Each morning, Evelyn walked through the palace grounds and spoke with the people who worked there. She learned their names, listened to their stories, and treated them with the same respect she hoped to receive. Slowly, some began to question the opinions they had formed about her. They expected an Omega who wanted the attention of the royal title. Instead, they found someone who cared more about others than herself. Adrian Blackwood noticed the changes happening around him. The Alpha King had spent years believing that respect came from strength and authority. But watching Evelyn made him reconsider everything he had been taught. She did not demand loyalty. She created trust. One afternoon, Adrian found Evelyn in the royal library, studying old books about the history of Moonfall Kingdom. "You are searching for answers," Adrian said as he entered the room. Evelyn looked up and smiled slightly. "I think everyone deserves to know where they come from." Adrian glanced at the ancient records spread across the table. Most people would search for power if they discovered something unusual about themselves. Evelyn looked down at the pages. Power without purpose does not mean much. Her answer surprised him. The Alpha King had spent years surrounded by people who wanted influence, recognition, and status. But Evelyn spoke as if strength was something meant to serve others, not elevate herself. Later that evening, Adrian returned to the royal archives and continued searching through forgotten records. He discovered more references to a mysterious wolf lineage that had disappeared many generations ago. The records described a rare connection between an ancient spirit and a person who carried a forgotten legacy. The description was incomplete, but one detail caught his attention. The chosen person would not be recognized by their desire for power. They would be recognized by their ability to protect without seeking praise. Adrian thought about Evelyn. The more he learned about her, the more he realized that the qualities described in the old records matched her perfectly. Meanwhile, Evelyn returned to the ancient fountain in the palace gardens. She could not forget the strange silver light she had seen before. She placed her hand near the old symbol again, expecting nothing to happen. But this time the feeling was stronger. A quiet warmth surrounded her, and for a brief moment, she felt a connection to something much older than herself. It was not frightening. It felt familiar, almost like a forgotten memory waiting to return. Evelyn closed her eyes and listened. Deep inside, she sensed a presence that had always been there but had remained silent. She did not understand what it meant yet. She only knew that something inside her was beginning to awaken. From the palace balcony, Adrian looked toward the gardens and saw Evelyn standing near the ancient symbol. For the first time, he wondered if the kingdom had not chosen him to save her. Perhaps destiny had brought her to Moonfall because she was the one who could change everything. And hidden beneath years of forgotten history, the secret of Evelyn's wolf was finally beginning to reveal itself. The morning sun rose over Moonfall Kingdom, but inside the royal palace, a quiet uncertainty continued to grow. The ancient records discovered by Adrian Blackwood had revealed the possibility of a forgotten wolf lineage, yet no one knew what it truly meant for Evelyn Carter. To the kingdom, she was still the Omega bride who had arrived without a powerful family name. To Adrian, she was becoming someone he could no longer ignore. But for Evelyn herself, the mystery was not about becoming special. It was about understanding why something hidden inside her had been waiting all these years. Elder Marcus, the oldest historian of Moonfall Kingdom, requested a private meeting with Evelyn in the ancient archives. The room was filled with dusty books, forgotten scrolls, and records from generations long past. He carefully opened an old manuscript with symbols matching the mark Evelyn had discovered in the garden. Some stories disappear because people stop believing them, Elder Marcus said. But forgotten does not mean unimportant. Evelyn looked at the ancient pages with curiosity. What does this symbol represent? The elder paused before answering. A wolf that existed before the current royal bloodlines. A spirit connected not to power, but to balance. Evelyn listened quietly. She had spent her entire life believing she was the weakest person in every room she entered. Hearing that something ancient was connected to her felt impossible. Meanwhile, Adrian faced another challenge inside the royal council chamber. The nobles who questioned his decision had begun asking more questions about Evelyn's arrival. They believed the Alpha King needed to reconsider his choice before the kingdom accepted her as his Luna. The people need certainty, one advisor said. Adrian looked across the chamber. Certainty does not come from ignoring the truth. His words surprised everyone. The Alpha King, who had once followed tradition without question, was now defending something unknown, because he believed there was more to discover. Later that day, Adrian found Evelyn outside the palace gardens. She was sitting beside the ancient fountain, looking at the symbol beneath the water's surface. "You have been coming here often," Adrian said. Evelyn turned toward him. "I feel like this place remembers something I do not." Adrian looked at the symbol. "The records suggest your connection is not random." Evelyn smiled softly. "Does that worry you?" For a moment, Adrian did not answer. The old version of himself would have said yes. Anything unknown was a risk to the kingdom. But now he saw something different. "No," he finally said. "It makes me want to understand." Those simple words meant more to Evelyn than he realized. The Alpha King was no longer speaking to her as a responsibility. He was speaking to her as a person. That evening, Evelyn returned to the ancient fountain once again. This time, the silver glow appeared before she even touched the symbol. The air around her felt different, as if something inside her had recognized the moment. She closed her eyes and heard a quiet presence within her mind. It was not a voice of command. It was a feeling of belonging, a connection to something she had carried since birth. Far away, Adrian studied the same ancient records and discovered one final message hidden between the pages. The forgotten wolf awakens not when it seeks power, but when it finds purpose. He looked toward the palace gardens, where Evelyn stood beneath the moonlight. For the first time, the Alpha King understood that the mystery was not about what Evelyn could become. It was about who she had always been. And soon, the entire kingdom would discover that the Omega they underestimated carried a legacy far greater than anyone imagined. The days following the discovery of the ancient records brought a quiet transformation throughout Moonfall Kingdom. The people had not yet learned the full truth about Evelyn Carter, but they had begun to notice something different about her. She was no longer just the Omega bride chosen by the Alpha King. She was someone who listened, someone who cared, and someone who treated every person in the kingdom with respect. Evelyn never tried to prove herself through power. She simply continued living by the values she had always believed in. One morning, she visited the villages near the edge of the kingdom with permission from Adrian Blackwood. Many villagers were surprised to see the future Luna walking among them without guards surrounding her or expecting special treatment. They had imagined someone from the royal palace would feel distant and unreachable. Instead, Evelyn sat with families, asked about their daily lives, and listened to concerns that had been ignored for years. She learned about farmers preparing for the colder season, workers hoping for better opportunities, and families who wanted their children to grow up believing they had a future. Evelyn did not make impossible promises. She simply reminded them that their voices mattered. News of her actions slowly traveled back to the palace. The same people who once questioned why Adrian chose her began to wonder if they had misunderstood her from the beginning. Meanwhile, Adrian watched these changes carefully. The Alpha King had always believed leadership required distance. He thought a ruler needed to appear untouchable to maintain respect. But Evelyn showed him another path. She proved that people did not only follow strength, they followed someone who truly understood them. During a private conversation in the royal library, Adrian looked through the ancient records once again. He found more details about the forgotten wolf lineage and discovered that those connected to it were never remembered because of their authority. They were remembered because they brought people together during difficult times. The legacy was never about ruling over others, Elder Marcus explained. It was about reminding leaders who they were meant to serve. Adrian looked toward the palace windows, thinking about Evelyn. The answer had been in front of him all along. That evening, Evelyn returned to the ancient garden fountain. She still felt connected to the mysterious symbol, but she no longer felt afraid of it. She understood that whatever was awakening inside her was not something meant to change who she was. It was something that reflected who she had always been. As she placed her hand near the ancient marking, a gentle silver light appeared again. This time she felt a warmth that reached beyond the symbol. She felt memories that were not her own, like echoes of a forgotten past. She saw images of people standing together, protecting one another, and choosing compassion over pride. When the vision faded, Evelyn opened her eyes with a new understanding. The wolf inside her was not a source of superiority. It was a reminder of responsibility. From the palace balcony, Adrian witnessed the silver glow from the gardens. For the first time, he felt certain that his choice had never been a mistake. The kingdom had spent years searching for someone powerful enough to lead them. But perhaps they had been searching for the wrong thing. Perhaps the future of Moonfall Kingdom depended on someone who could remind them that true strength was never about making others kneel. It was about giving others a reason to stand together. And soon, the world would learn why the forgotten wolf inside Evelyn Carter had awakened. The quiet changes spreading through Moonfall Kingdom did not go unnoticed. While many people had begun to admire Evelyn Carter, there were still those who struggled to accept what her presence represented. For generations, the kingdom had believed that strength came from a certain bloodline, a certain position, and a certain image of what a leader should be. Evelyn challenged all of those beliefs simply by being herself. Inside the royal council chamber, the nobles gathered once again to discuss the future of the kingdom. The ancient records connected to Evelyn's wolf lineage had become impossible to ignore, but some members of the council still questioned whether an Omega could truly carry such a significant legacy. The kingdom has always followed tradition, one advisor said. Changing what has guided us for generations is not a simple decision. Evelyn stood quietly as she listened. She understood their hesitation. She knew that people were not only afraid of her power, they were afraid of a future they could not predict. Before she could respond, Adrian Blackwood stepped forward. The Alpha King looked across the chamber and remembered the person he was when Evelyn first arrived. He had believed that protecting the kingdom meant keeping everything under control. He had believed that emotions created weakness, and that difficult choices had to be made alone. But Evelyn had shown him another way. Tradition is important, Adrian said calmly. But tradition should guide us, not prevent us from seeing the truth. The room became silent. The nobles looked surprised by the Alpha King's words. Adrian continued, "A kingdom is not strong because it refuses to change. A kingdom is strong because it knows when change is necessary." Evelyn looked at him, realizing how much he had changed since the day they first met. The man who once viewed their connection as a responsibility was now standing beside her because he believed in her. Later that evening, Evelyn and Adrian walked through the palace gardens. The same place where Evelyn had first discovered the ancient symbol now felt different. The cold distance between them had slowly disappeared. "You defended me today," Evelyn said softly. Adrian looked toward the moonlit path. "Because I finally understood something." He paused. "I spent years searching for the qualities of a great leader. I never realized they were standing in front of me." Evelyn smiled gently. "You mean the wolf?" Adrian shook his head. "No. I mean you." Those words stayed with Evelyn. She had spent her life believing that she needed to prove she deserved respect. But Adrian reminded her that her worth had never depended on anyone's approval. Meanwhile, Elder Marcus continued studying the ancient records and discovered a hidden message about the awakened wolf. The writings explained that the true purpose of the ancient lineage was not to create a ruler above everyone else. It was to recognize someone who could bring people together. The wolf inside Evelyn was not awakening because she was seeking power. It was awakening because she understood responsibility. That night, Evelyn returned to the ancient fountain beneath the palace grounds. The silver light appeared brighter than before, surrounding the forgotten symbol with a peaceful glow. She felt the presence inside her becoming clearer, not as something separate, but as a part of herself that had always existed. From the palace balcony, Adrian watched the light rise beneath the kingdom. He knew the world was about to discover the truth that Moonfall had forgotten for generations. The Omega everyone underestimated was not becoming powerful because of the wolf inside her. She was awakening because the strength had always been there. The night after the ancient wolf fully revealed its presence within Evelyn Carter, Moonfall Kingdom entered a moment unlike any other in its history. The silver light that appeared beneath the palace grounds became a symbol of a forgotten legacy, returning after generations of silence. Yet Evelyn did not feel like someone who had gained a new identity. She felt like someone who had finally discovered a missing part of herself. The next morning, the palace halls were filled with quiet conversations. Everyone wanted to understand what the awakening meant, but Evelyn remained focused on one thing. She did not want people to respect her because of a mysterious power. She wanted them to see the same person she had always been. During a gathering with the people of Moonfall Kingdom, Evelyn stood beside Adrian Blackwood and listened as families shared their hopes for the future. Many had once looked at her with doubt. Now they saw a woman who had never used her position to place herself above them. She had walked among them, listened to their concerns, and treated every person with dignity. Adrian watched the crowd carefully. The Alpha King noticed something he had never seen before. The people were not gathering because they feared Evelyn's awakened wolf. They were gathering because they trusted her heart. Later that day, Elder Marcus invited Evelyn and Adrian into the ancient archives. The historian had discovered more information about the forgotten wolf lineage. The records explained that the ancient wolf was not a symbol of dominance. It represented a connection between the ruler and the people they served. Many believed the strongest wolf would be the one who could command others, Elder Marcus explained. But the true meaning was different. The strongest spirit is the one that can bring others together. Evelyn looked at the old pages carefully. She finally understood why her awakening had happened slowly. It was never about proving she was better than anyone else. It was about showing that someone who had been overlooked could still carry something extraordinary. Meanwhile, Adrian reflected on his own journey. For years, he had carried the responsibility of the Alpha King by keeping everyone at a distance. He believed emotions could distract him from his duties. But Evelyn had changed the way he viewed leadership. She had shown him that understanding people was not a weakness. It was the foundation of trust. That evening, Adrian found Evelyn standing beneath the moonlight near the palace gardens. The ancient symbol glowed softly beside her. "Are you afraid of what comes next?" he asked. Evelyn looked toward the kingdom below. "A little," she admitted. "But I am more afraid of forgetting who I am because of what others expect me to become." Adrian smiled slightly. "That is exactly why you were chosen." Evelyn turned toward him. "Chosen by the wolf?" Adrian shook his head. "Chosen by the person you have always been." His words reminded her that the greatest discovery was not the power hidden inside her. It was the strength she had shown long before anyone knew about the ancient wolf. As the days passed, the people of Moonfall began preparing for a ceremony that would reveal the truth of Evelyn's legacy. Some still questioned what the future would bring, but the fear that once surrounded her was beginning to disappear. The girl who arrived at the palace with no one believing in her had become the person everyone wanted to understand. And soon, the entire kingdom would witness the moment when Evelyn's awakened wolf would reveal why destiny had brought her to Moonfall. The days before the ceremony of recognition brought a peaceful but powerful change to Moonfall Kingdom. The palace that once felt cold and distant to Evelyn Carter now felt different. The same halls where people once questioned her worth were now filled with quiet respect. Yet Evelyn remained careful not to let the attention change who she was. She knew the awakened wolf inside her was important, but she also knew that a title or a hidden legacy did not define her entire identity. What mattered most was the person she chose to be every day. As preparations for the ceremony continued, Evelyn spent her time meeting with different families across the kingdom. She wanted the event to represent more than her own story. She wanted it to represent everyone who had ever felt unseen or forgotten. Many people who once believed she was too ordinary began sharing stories about how her kindness had affected them. They remembered how she listened when others ignored them, and how she treated every person with the same respect. Adrian Blackwood watched these moments carefully. The Alpha King had once believed that a ruler's role was to stand above the people and carry every burden alone. But Evelyn had changed his understanding of leadership. She showed him that a true leader did not create distance. A true leader created connection. Before the ceremony, the royal council gathered one final time. Some members still carried doubts, but their doubts were no longer based on disbelief. They were based on their fear of leaving behind traditions they had followed for generations. Evelyn stood before them calmly. "I do not want this legacy because it makes me different," she said. "I want to use it because it reminds us that everyone in this kingdom matters." Her words reached even those who had struggled to accept her. Adrian stood beside her, not as someone protecting her, but as someone standing with her. The difference was clear. He was no longer the Alpha King who had chosen an Omega bride because of an unknown feeling. He was the Alpha King who believed in the woman beside him. Later that evening, Evelyn returned to the ancient chamber beneath the palace one final time before the ceremony. The forgotten symbol on the stone wall glowed softly as she approached. This time she felt no uncertainty. The wolf inside her was no longer a mystery she needed to fear or understand. It was a part of her journey. She closed her eyes and felt memories from generations before her. She felt the hopes of those who carried the same responsibility. They were not memories of power or control. They were memories of people choosing compassion when the world expected something else. When Evelyn opened her eyes, the silver light surrounding the chamber had become brighter than ever. She understood the true meaning of her awakening. The wolf had not appeared to make others follow her. It had awakened because she had already spent her life caring for others. From the palace balcony, Adrian looked toward the chamber below and smiled. The kingdom had spent years searching for a powerful ruler. But the future they needed was not someone who demanded respect. It was someone who inspired it. As the ceremony approached, the entire kingdom prepared to witness the truth about Evelyn Carter. The Omega girl who arrived with no one believing in her was about to show everyone that the greatest strength was never hidden in a crown. It was hidden in the heart of the person who carried it. The day of the recognition ceremony arrived beneath a clear silver sky, and the entire Moonfall Kingdom gathered at the royal palace. The grand hall that once carried whispers of doubt was now filled with a different feeling. The people who had once questioned why the Alpha King chose Evelyn Carter now waited to witness the truth they had failed to see. Evelyn stood quietly before the ceremony began, remembering the day she first entered the palace. She remembered the uncertain looks, the quiet judgment, and the feeling that she did not belong in a world built around power and tradition. But now she understood something important. She had never needed to become someone else to deserve respect. She had only needed to remain true to herself. As Evelyn entered the grand hall, the ancient symbols of Moonfall Kingdom began to glow softly. The silver light spread across the room, not as a display of power, but as a reminder of the forgotten legacy that had returned. The people watched in silence as the symbol connected to her awakened wolf appeared before them. Elder Marcus stepped forward with the ancient records in his hands. For generations we believed strength came from those who stood above others, he said. But history has shown us that true strength belongs to those who bring people together. Evelyn looked across the hall and saw the same people who once doubted her. She did not feel anger toward them. She understood that many had simply believed what they had been taught. Change was difficult, especially when it challenged old traditions. I never wanted this legacy because I wanted to be greater than anyone else, Evelyn said. I accepted it because I believe every person in this kingdom deserves to be seen and valued. Her words filled the hall with a quiet emotion. Even those who had struggled to accept her began to understand why the ancient wolf had awakened within her. It was never because she was seeking power. It was because she had always carried the qualities of a true leader. Adrian Blackwood stood beside her, watching the kingdom recognize the person he had discovered long before anyone else. The Alpha King remembered the first day he chose Evelyn. He remembered the questions, the doubts, and the uncertainty surrounding his decision. But now he knew the truth. He had not chosen someone who needed to be changed. He had chosen someone who would change everything around her. After the ceremony, Evelyn and Adrian stood together on the palace balcony overlooking Moonfall Kingdom. The lights from countless homes shined below them, representing the people they promised to serve. Do you ever think about how different everything was when you first arrived? Adrian asked softly. Evelyn smiled. I remember thinking everyone had already decided who I was. Adrian looked at her. And now? Evelyn looked toward the kingdom. Now I know that other people's opinions do not decide my worth. The Alpha King smiled because he understood the meaning behind her words. The woman beside him was not remembered because of an ancient wolf or a forgotten bloodline. She was remembered because she showed the kingdom a different kind of strength. The kind that listens. The kind that protects. The kind that inspires. Beneath the moonlight, Moonfall Kingdom entered a new era. The Omega girl who once stood alone became the heart of the kingdom. The Alpha King who once carried every burden alone finally learned that true leadership was not about standing above others. It was about standing beside them. And together, Evelyn and Adrian began a future built on trust, respect, and the belief that even those the world overlooks can become the ones who change it forever.